Hello BookTube, Merry Christmas. My name is Juan, I am just one reader, and I just finished reading The Narrow Road Between Desires by Patrick Rothfuss. This is the new novella in the Kingkiller Chronicle universe. Patrick Rothfuss has written The Name of the Wind, The Wise Man's Fear, and The Slow Regard of Silent Things, and now this new novella, which was just published back in November, so roughly a month ago. And I wanted to love this book like you have no idea. I think it's safe to say this has been my most anticipated release for at least a couple years. So much so that I actually anticipated reading this book in terms of I reread the series. I reread The Name of the Wind, The Wise Man's Fear, and I've been sort of disappointed by the series now that I'm rereading it, or that I have reread it as an adult. I have to say, I actually have made a video talking about my reread of The Name of the Wind specifically, and I bumped it down from a 5-star read to a 4-star read. I think the book has some good ideas, but the execution and the writing and the storytelling and the characterization are kind of all over the place and kind of mediocre sometimes in the story. That's The Name of the Wind. And then The Wise Man's Fear is a very messy book. I think there are some spectacular moments of great writing in there and great storytelling, but the book is just really badly put together, and so it's very, very chaotic, and I think it's a 3-star book, honestly, at best. Now, coming to The Narrow Road Between Desires. I was so disappointed by this book. Oh man, I want to cry. Patrick Rothfuss, don't do this to me on Christmas Day, man. I saved this book for Christmas Day, for crying out loud. Like, this is what I had been looking forward to doing this Christmas Day this year, and I am so let down. It's my own fault for putting so much pressure on one man, one author, and one tiny novella, which was not even going to be book 3 or anything like that. I just wanted to read Patrick Rothfuss, you know. I just wanted to be immersed in his writing, his words, because he can be able of producing beautiful musical language, you know, beautiful writing. So I just wanted to really, really tell you, hey, this book is amazing. You have to try it. You're gonna love it. Don't. This is not a good book. The writing is not really that great. I should preface this video by saying that this book is really a rewriting or a reworking of a previous short story that he had written some years ago for an anthology. That story was called The Lightning Tree. I had never read that story. I didn't really know it existed until a few months ago. I didn't bother, you know, going back and trying that story. I just wanted to read the reworked story, the finished product, if you will. It was not good. It was bloated. It was overwritten. It was like elongated. I had this feeling that this was like, you know, like Bilbo Baggins says, like too little butter spread over too much bread. Like, that's how this story felt. It felt incredibly spread out and elongated for no apparent reason, but at the same time, it also felt like it didn't really have enough substance in it. Like, it felt too long and too short at the same time. Too simplistic and also too complicated for no reason at the same time, which is a weird feeling to have. And I think this is something that applies to Patrick Rothfuss's writing in some parts of it, not all the times, because like I say, he is capable of producing really good scenes and really interesting, mysterious, fascinating feeling kind of magic. That was not really here. So I didn't really like the writing. The characterization was not really well done here, in my opinion. The dialogue, there was very little of it, and I didn't really feel like it crackled or did anything particularly interesting or unique or different. The descriptions, I'm finding, you know, now that I've reread very recently both of his novels, I found that I don't really care for the way that he's very excessive with metaphors and similes. He uses a lot of them, and they can feel very cringe-worthy, very melodramatic, and very heavy-handed, very on the nose, and just very sweet and kind of corny. And yeah, I was cringing sometimes with the excessive use of metaphors and similes, and the descriptive, it felt very honeyed, and I don't know how to describe it, but I just don't like that particular kind of writing. But that's a personal thing. You might love it. There are some beautiful passages in this book, I won't deny that, but oh man, I was just so disappointed because the story itself is very, very boring and very dull, very uninteresting. I was waiting for the first 100 pages for something to really grab me or make me interested, but the story was just kind of, it sort of feels like it wants to be some kind of fairy tale or fairy tale-esque kind of story, but I think it fails at that. It doesn't really capture the feel of a classic fairy tale. In my humble opinion, it doesn't. Then there's like a weird disconnection because it sort of wants to feel like a medieval European, you know, typical fantasy kind of world, and then some of the characters will say things that just feel very American, like Midwestern. Like, I think a character said something like, it's hot as ass, or something like that. I mean, I don't remember. I should have highlighted the quotes. But then there's another character that says something like, I hope your dick falls off. And it's like, what? Who talks like that in this world? I don't know. It just sort of created this kind of dissonance within me. So it felt kind of vulgar within the context of what I was feeling in the world. I don't know how to explain that. It just felt kind of weird tonally. I think he's an author, and this is true for all of his works that I've read. He's an author that is more focused on certain ideas and certain world building aspects than real character and real dialogue and real storytelling. I don't think he puts a lot of effort or emphasis or like stress into the storytelling aspect of things. I think he's much more interested in writing characters that he thinks are interesting without really making them feel lifelike or real or funny or, you know. And also I think he has this kind of fixation as an author with creating this, what he thinks is vivid, beautiful musical language. And sometimes he achieves that, but sometimes it just feels cloying and sugar sweet and heavy-handed and cringeworthy. Also, this book was very homoerotic, which I was not expecting. Thank you. There's a very weird, like, sexual tone to this story that I was not expecting. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just there. There's this like fat lady, naked, and she's like sexually, you know, enticing the character, but our character is kind of gay. I don't know. There's also something that kind of bugged me about this. I mean, hello, Mr. Bast. Hello. Let me tell you the name of the wind. I'm gonna whisper it right in your ear. So it was just kind of funny. I get the feeling that he wants to create this like almost wokeified characters now, or this, I don't know. I was laughing at some point. So there's a good story in here, somewhere hidden in here. I will tell you that. There's a story with a boy called Reiki or Reich or something, and he has an interesting kind of conflict, and the way that the author deals with that conflict, I think, is pretty sweet. I think this was like a 5-page short story that was elongated to 220 pages. Honestly, it's not worth it. It's not worth reading this book. I think my favorite part of this book is the actual, at the end of once you're done with the story itself, there's a couple of authors' notes, like end notes, and he just rambles, about different topics and his children and his life and his internal struggle. And Patrick Rothfuss, I love reading that. I would love if Patrick Rothfuss would just write nonfiction at this point. I think he's better at it. I think I personally now in 2023, almost 2024, I think I'm more interested as a reader in Patrick Rothfuss as a person than what he writes, which, I would love if he would just write something like Neil Gaiman, who writes a lot of nonfiction. Like there's that Neil Gaiman book, The View from the Cheap Seats, which if you haven't read, oh my God, you should read that. I would love if Patrick Rothfuss would just ramble about life and his opinions and his ideas and his perspective and his life and his children, and just write nonfiction. I think that would be great. Anyway, this was a 2-star book for me. Also, the illustrations felt kind of tacky to me. They are not really some of them are quite simple and nice, fairy tale inspired. Some of the illustrations, though, felt very tacky, in my opinion. Like, they felt like something that I would expect from like a Brandon Sanderson kind of aesthetic. This one right here, this kind of looked like very cheap Brandon Sanderson aesthetic to me, and you might like that. I particularly don't like that kind of aesthetic in my fantasy. I am much more inclined to a more classical, more natural kind of vibe when it comes to fantasy, something like Robin Hobb, or not that I didn't like that. Anyway, if you have read this book, let me know, what did you think? Maybe prove me wrong. I don't know. Just let me know in the comments down below what are your thoughts on this book if you have read it. I am not interested in people's opinion of Patrick Rothfuss or this book specifically if they haven't read it, because a lot of people give Patrick Rothfuss a really hard time because he's not writing book 3, or just because he hasn't delivered on many things that he's promised. And I completely get that that kind of emotion that people have, but I'm here only to judge what I read. I can separate author from his work, and yeah, just the work itself to me was very pathetic and mediocre. Sorry, this is not a book that I would recommend.